maybe even some people thought of as a Nepo baby involved in the whole OAP program at AT&T. And we went and launched a market successfully with our partner COS. We were able to integrate with AT&T systems. We're very successful with that. Give me 24 hours and we'll be launching another market with AT&T. And so very proud of that. Very proud of the fact that we are, no disrespect to joint venture, not a joint venture. This is all our capital. I've had some good conversations this morning about whether or not it actually makes sense to put your capital behind this. And we think it does. And so very proud of that. So anyway, I want to call Sajid out for that. Thanks.
I still love you.
I love you too.
Hi everyone, myself Iswar Tripathy. I work as a solution architect in Infinity. So I belong to the network services department in Infinity. But in Infinity, we do all the day 0 to day 2 services, starting with multi-vendor, network integration, design, engineering, and we belong to the multi-technology, multi-vendor, and we have presence or expertise in multi-parts of the network. Say it access network, edge network, or core network. And personally, myself, I have expertise for more than 80 years in network design, integration, and an expert in basically on the fiber access, OLT, ONTs, on-stage protocol. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Van. I'm the EVP of Growth and Business Development at Element8. For those of you who don't know, we're the fixed wireless part of this technology agnostic panel, and we have about 700 next generation fixed wireless access towers across the United States. It's about 10 states of Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, Las Vegas. That's not a state, but you get it. It's big. It's like the whole state of population. And then Phoenix and LA. And so we're one of the largest providers of Toronto next generation fixed wireless. And I think from our point of view, we actually have so much capacity that if this utilization and saturation conversations using open access has been very interesting. So just a different world than fiber.
So good afternoon. I am Greg Walton, lead product development person or manager for AT&T. So I'm the token ISP person up here. And so a lot of my day-to-day job is to look at identify opportunities to grow AT&T, to grow them not only in a traditional sense, which is fiber and fiber deployments, but also maybe as this panel will discuss, non-traditional, different ways of doing it, different architectures, different solutions and others. And so I'm sitting here and I would give on this panel and to anyone that has questions, the perspective from me, from where I'm sitting relative to how we could benefit from an ISP relative to an open access or access providers that offer different opportunities for us as to anchor tenant in many cases or as a second ISP and others.
Okay. Thanks for the intro. So I will actually start with you, Greg, and you open up to it a little bit with your presentation there. But to an ISP, typically the open access network you've seen has to know fiber. But why would it be interesting for you as an ISP to be on open access networks using other technology?
So there's a couple of intrinsic benefits to AT&T and Ultras as well. So one of them, of course, is everyone knows in here is time to market. We have a limited amount of time to get out there, to get our brands out there, to have a solution that will work. It's a highly competitive market on our side with the Magenta company, amongst others that are, can't say the name of that are uber aggressive, highly financed, capable companies that are taking advantage of that and are building out within our footprint and outside of our footprint and taking market share. And so first and foremost, I've got to get out there as an ISP and figure out how to continue to grow my market share. Not only have I told this to Wall Street, my CEO has said this, but also the fact that we want to win in this market, you have to be out there. And fiber in a traditional sense is great. It is distinctive and provides, a very homogenous type of experience from a customer and solution standpoints. But at the same time, it's expensive, it's slow, it takes a lot of capital and OpEx, as the previous panel was talking about, to do that. And the open access has provided us some means to offset some of that from an ISP standpoint. So we're looking at alternatives and trying to figure out what else can we do. And, and also the fact that we know that back on investments, that we're not going to get investments back on some of these as we move farther away from like the urban centers, farther and farther away from the urban centers to rural and even ex-urban, or what they're calling, as these go out there. I can't necessarily get, based on a $70 a month service, the return on investments that it would take for me or even the access providers to build terrestrial fiber to some of those areas. That and pressures to provide internet to everyone, right? Internet for everyone. The AT&T gets a lot of pressure associated with that. So there's a lot of ancillary reasons for upfront and others to look at alternate technologies to help us expand. And so I'm excited to be looking at it and considering it and trying to figure out in something like LMA or Toronto be an opportunity or option for it. We're not there yet, but we're looking at it.
Okay. So you don't come and Dave, you just introduce yourself if you have a ton of fixed wireless network out there. But from a architectural perspective, if you think about serviceability, address management, provisioning, those kind of things, what would be the difference between fixed wireless and fiber?
Yeah. So one of the main differences as we think about opening up our network, it's, in fiber, you have a deterministic world, right? It's either on or off for the ISP partner. For us, coverage is probabilistic, right? So what are the standards? What's your confidence level for those of you who are familiar with either Toronto or any fixed wireless is that can change by season, right? You got a tree that wasn't there, it's a road going up, it's construction happening. And so that's one of the biggest challenges. And that's just as an industry as a whole. As Sajid knows, we're going from a world of line of sight to now non-line of sight and line of sight. With better technology, better capacity. But that doesn't change the fact that we have to, raise the bar across the board if we're going to have an alternative technology serve a tier 1 ISP.
So Iswar, I'm going to ask you to chime in as well. 18 years of system integration and technology. What would you say?
Yeah, for sure. Like Jonathan mentioned, the architecture itself is a little different. So the Iswar is kind of a static provisioning model, where we have the ONT, OLT, it's all physical addressing. While the wireless, it's most of the things are like, it needs maybe RF planning and, provisioning models. And as Jonathan mentioned, the line of sight changes always, depending on the terrain, depending on the weather, depending on the foliage. So for sure, proactive monitoring, continuous monitoring of the system, that's always needed. And, the fiber is a kind of fixed or static provisioning, while a lot of things in the wireless is done over the air. So yeah, that's the basic architectural difference. And, probably it both need to come together, there should be unified systems, technology abstractions, at every part of the layer.
So one interesting comment was, fiber is connected or not. Fixed wireless, there might be tree in the way, or there's you have a line of sight.
An example would be your signal could degrade. You can also improve.
So I'm going to ask you, Ron, because you always have opinions about things. What's your opinion? Is it up to the fixed wireless provider to provide this is the area served, and then what addresses are actually serviceable? Is up to them to decide, or would that be the network owner, if it's fixed wireless, they serve the addresses that are actually serviceable?
It's not fair. We actually had this conversation earlier today. But I expect that what you're going to offer up is some kind of polygon, right? You're going to say, here's my radio, and this is what I think is covered. And, for the fixed wireless guys, I'm going to put a pin here, and I'm going to draw as big a circle I can draw because I want as many rooftops, as many addresses in the system. But I'm going to throw this from the sacks and get too many. talking about addresses in the system and how do you manage this, right? But at some point you have to disqualify these things. At some point you have to say this rooftop is no longer reachable. It doesn't count. And, at that point, put it in your list. Let's roll fiber with that. And the dirty little secret, because I talked a lot about dirty little secrets, these things, is, and I don't think anybody from Toronto is actually in the room, but the radio guys will sell you on the idea of going fixed wireless first and chasing it with fiber. And then the fear that we're not talking about is what happens when you show up with fiber and they say, fixed wireless is good enough. I'll just stay there. Right. So on the retail side, I see, 5 to 7% of my consumers on my retail business of fiber will choose fixed wireless anyway. They're cost conscious. They think fixed wireless is good enough. They don't want to believe in fiber pitch, whatever. If you go the other direction and you do fixed wireless first and then you show up with fiber, there's a tremendous fear that it's going to be 15 or 20 or 25%.
Maybe you don't give them the choice to stay. Just integrate it on.
I don't want to insult the Swedes in the room. That sounds very European.
Okay, so I have a question to you, Craig. What is, as ISP, in your perspective, what is important to you if you have a mixed environment? So it's fiber, it's fixed wireless. What is important?
So the way that we try to position our relationship with the access providers is back to tin can and string, right? I don't need to care if it's fiber or wireless. The access provider is going to tell me from a specific address, what service can I get or not get? What speeds can I get or not get in my download and uploads? And I will interpret that and present a product to my customers based on what they tell me they do. I am paying you to manage a network and an infrastructure that is going to provide a level of services you tell me you could provide. So for example, in a mixed world in fiber, as many of you know, we'll have GPON and XGS-PON, right? And if I have GPON here, I can only get up to, guess what? G speeds, 1 gig. The access provider will have both. And the access provider tells me this address only has 1 gig and above, therefore I'll only present the customer 1 gig and above. If this address has all these different options and capabilities, and I won't offer mixed, I won't do fiber and fixed wireless at the house. I will pick and choose a prioritization based on that because I can't do that systematically. At least not yet. But I will look and see, and that I would base it on that, if that makes sense. And so from my perspective, I'm not looking into their networks and determining things. I'm asking them to give me the result sets.
Sounds like he's asking, telling you what he wants from you. What's your view on what the guy delivered?
So I think the biggest thing with our version of fixed wireless with Cron is it's a collective learning effort, frankly. Like WISPs themselves, ourselves too, they came to market in 2021. We're one of the largest deployers. But frankly, we also taught their team what the limitations or the benefits of how far ranging the technology is. So I think it's a learning process, right? We will give confidence scores, speed levels that meet some product requirement. But I think that's something that's unique to at least with the capacity and the speeds that we can do. Is whether that's 100, 800, 500, you can actually build with some level of confidence that you can hit that. In our world, I want the address to be at the centroid of the roof, but talking about different thoughts on addresses. So yeah, that's the way we think about the world.
So it's fun. And, fixed wireless, it seems like there has been a lot of improvements in the technology lately. Would you say that might be the reason why we're basically having this panel? Open access could actually be viable on only fixed wireless. Does it have to do with the technology?
Yeah, for sure. I think, Greg and Rob, and they can, mention more, but for sure, if you see fixed wireless, to get the quality of service, to get the network performance, and to get the guaranteed speed, which we easily get in the fiber. For sure, there has been advancements in every sector. Let's say we talk about the quality of service, the network slicing, where the wireless network is divided into particular slices, and the guaranteed bandwidth is provided to that. I think there are various technologies. massive to massive broadband communication, ultra reliable low latency communications for autonomous and industrial IoT. So there has been, and if you say in a single term, it's all network function virtualization, where some unified layer can understand all the different technologies, in an agnostic way. And like Craig was mentioning at the end, you say customer satisfaction, right? So how you can do the customer satisfaction when multiple technologies are there. So yeah, I mean, there has been technology advancements in wireless and all different technologies, not only fiber wireless, but all other, technologies in the field as well. And the general term is, zero touch provisioning, then software defined networking, network patch virtualization. So that's high level covers everything. Yeah.
This is just an observation from we're in the fringe FWA camp, right? I think most people, when you think of FWA, is 5G FWA. So the market is showing us that 5G FWA is a popular product, right? Some people do opt for 5G FWA. You said over, right? Yeah, 7% is
solid.
probably
Single
not
digits.
Toronto FWA. I'd imagine it's other 5G FWA. So I think the market has spoken to all of us. To open up our technology stack beyond fiber open access.
So Rob, you started talking about this phased approach where you go first with fixed wireless. Actually, I mean the use cases typically has to be, if you're not a fixed wireless provider, but you are actually a fiber provider, you would use fiber like to edge out where it doesn't make sense ever to build fiber. But I know we had a conversation and we talked a little bit about it now that, to grab the market without the fixed wireless and roll fiber, move out, reuse the radios further up. You said, what happens if they don't move over from fixed wireless to fiber? Do you have practical experience? Have you seen this being done? Is it just a theory or does it actually happen?
Well, yeah, I would say that the closest example I had was actually, and you'll probably be able to guess who this is, but I wouldn't say who was both an ISP and owned their own radio equipment. They were a manufacturer. And that was their strategy, was to build it out and then edge out and roll it out, and then chase it with fiber on the ISP side. And they were very circumspect about this, but it became pretty clear that they weren't building a whole lot of fiber. So at some point, they just committed to fixed wireless as an architecture. I'm a big proponent of fiber. I point to my ship logo on my shirts in the name, right? And we, as I said, put our money, our investors' money where we believed, which is open access fiber. But there are lots of places where I wouldn't want to build it. So when we were talking about this, the idea was I put out, like to Craig's point, fixed wireless. I get a certain number of subscribers. And then maybe I don't force them over, but maybe I saturate the cells to the point where those guys realize the fiber is a better solution. And then I have enough capacity on that fixed wireless, what's left of my radios, to possibly do a fixed wireless backup, which seems to be really popular these days. And if you're just a pure play fiber provider, you probably don't have that in your kit. But if you start out as a fixed wireless, roll out the fiber, edge it out, eventually you get to where fixed wireless is on the edge of your network where fiber doesn't make any sense, and you have just enough in the core to do backup and keep the 3 to 5%, 5 to 7% stragglers who just are dying to stay in fixed wireless.
Okay. So Jonathan, you have more fixed wireless. You're looking at opening up, and we had a little prep call for this. And you taught me something I had no idea about, and that was, and you alluded to the little bit earlier, but like with the capacity.
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned is, so in a world of WISPs, we went from think a tower could cover 100 to 150 customers, right? And then we moved to a world, Toronto, where we could cover 1,000. I guess their next generation covers 2,000 customers a tower. But if you were where we are in rural America, there's not a lot of places you can sign up 2,000 customers to a tower and meet all like when I look at the financial model, if I get a tower to 2,000 customers, I think it's printing. Never seen that happen in real life, but I want it to happen. And so I think that's the biggest challenge. So we have a retail business. It's got tens of thousands of subs on it. but we still have many hundreds of thousands of slots that are available on the network. So this thought of utilization that's critical, I think, is what's necessary to see the full utilization of the technology. It's in geographies that either need more penetration or it needs, more demand and to go into geographies that can drive to, your homes passed per mile or whatever. And there's some middle ground between what is high return fiber builds and places that you would deploy our technology to get the best return. So it's just a new tool in the toolkit that I think most people have probably heard about, not seen that much in practice. It's very it just doesn't have a track record, but I think we're about to build that track record very shortly.
I want to call you out for something because I think you believe this in your heart, which is those radio vendors might be overselling the capacity of those radios because we've never achieved that saturation. So we'll never know until we get that many subs. But
I'd rather find out. It's a very profitable reason to find out.
Good thing to find out. Absolutely.
To me, it was very interesting because of fiber, of course, if you have fiber to the home and, there's going to be enough capacity to invite other providers and do it. But I had never really thought about, of course, the technology, fixed wireless technology and other technologies, they have their limitations, but just this capacity factor that just recently has basically, 10x or even 20x, and how that is like starting with, people's brain to start wandering around with, because it's a new opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Before you were meeting your capacity limit done wrong, and now suddenly there's almost no capacity limit. What do you do with all this capacity?
Yeah, what I tell people, we were at a show recently with called Channel Partners. I think one thing that was interesting was they're so used to what inventory is on the market that we haven't marketed that greatly, but there's just not that much new technology, new addresses available. And I think we're one of the few places where you get net new homes passed on a technology that just hasn't been. It's not widely spread yet, but it can be.
So when it comes to the business case, economy, I think this is pretty obvious, but Craig, what are the economic reasons why you would consider this?
Well, it reaches areas I can't today with fiber. Right? I mentioned that earlier. Maybe not within the next 3 to 5 years. I might have a build plan, but it takes a while to get the fiber out there. So that helps us in that case. Using access providers offsets costs for us from an ISP standpoint. I'm putting my product on top of his network, for example, right? So he has the OpEx to deal with what he has on his side, and I have the CapEx and others to deal with this subscriber acquisition costs and other models on that. But there's some ancillary benefits to me as well, such as, I mentioned the 5G solutions, and many of you know we have a 5G solution. We are seeing saturation in there. And so this offloads some of that, how important it is. If everyone's cell phone is much more important to them now than ever. And so by having an option, an opportunity to offload that in areas where I'm not going to have fiber, or I'm not going to have solutions is a benefit to me to continue to offer the level of services. And many of you know we have what's called AT&T guarantee. And so we guarantee our services now and pay for that. And so there are ancillary benefits to it. But at the end of the day, the business case works because we share in this. We share in the opportunities, and we put the costs associated with that in the right buckets. Us on the sales and marketing and product and billing and all that kind of fun stuff dealing with customers. And then John and his team dealing with the network and the network components and the distribution of it, the dispatching, the installation work, the repair work, all those. We both focus our efforts in others in those ways. Helps us tremendously.
I have a follow-up question on that. In fiber, fixed wireless, or other technologies, would you make a difference in that? What you just said, who is doing the in-home installation work? Is that a difference, or do you think that it should always be the network owner? Because that is something that I've seen differ a lot between different networks here. Some they want their ISPs to do parts of this, and some don't.
Yes, we have a concept in AT&T, and we've done a little bit of this, is we have what's called dark fiber and lit fiber, right? And in the dark fiber world, I'm just paying for physical fiber in the ground, right? It's me. It's my technicians. It's my groups, back to Isaac's point about all these different things. And in some cases that works, right? Again, the capital investments needed to put the fiber out there. It's still an open access market and network, but it's in my footprint and I can handle it from that standpoint. In this case, though, my relationships with the access providers, both Gator Power and others, is called lit fiber, which means everything from one section of the network through to another. The demarcation points are all owned, and I do not have the means, nor do I want to have the means to manage the network, the infrastructures, the customer installation work for others. I want the access providers to do that, soup to nuts, always, in my case. Primarily because the access providers are in Seattle, Washington. AT&T doesn't have a physical presence. I don't have warehouses. I don't have vans. I don't have relationships with the local markets and teams and groups. And so therefore, I have the access providers do that for me on my behalf.
What do you say, Will?
Yeah, so I happen to be one of those access providers, so I follow that model. We looked at a lot of different models before we kind of settled on this. I agree, if it's out of market, definitely the OAP is doing 100% of the work. For fiber, I don't want other people in my cans touching my fiber. So if it's a fiber build, like, it's always going to be me as far as I'm concerned. I don't know that you'll find somebody willing to do that. Fixed wireless may be a little different because you're just pointing at the radio, but also the expertise is so much more difficult to find. If you're outside of fixed wireless, like AT&T is going to go out and hire Tirana techs to roll these things out. I don't think so. So I guess, to Craig's point, see it as a lit service pretty much everywhere, but definitely for the fiber side, and nobody in my handles with me.
Agreed.
One thing, I think it was on the previous panel where they talked about evolving the ecosystem. I think that's part of both open access as a whole, and from Toronto's, our ecosystems are evolving, right? Like, WISPs have done everything in-house for the most part because you have to, right? We have fiber builds in our business, and we always view that as easier, but in a different way, because we can always make a phone call, find providers who can help us with that. So it's just a different kind of hard. So to your point, we do have a lot of in-house talent. I think as this version of fixed wireless scales, I think the ecosystem grows with it. So are there third-party installers today? Yes, but awesome. Are they the best? Maybe. We'll let you know.
I'm stealing that. It's a different kind of hard. I might get some shirts with it.
Okay, so I have another question. So if you look, I read this, everyone has their inbox spam, the different newsletters and all this kind of stuff. And then you see reports on these traditional cable operators, and we see, they're not really growing their subscriber numbers, to put it gently. And I mean, the satellite, fixed wireless improvements, getting better, fiber, they're all eating out of these cable operators. And I was thinking, if I was just losing, no matter what I lose. My only option is to spend a lot more money building fiber. What if I could prevent some of that, churn by opening up my networks and allowing the competition, because they're invested in the but if they can be on this technology, and maybe with the upgrades, Salian talked about, and he knows his stocks is stuff much better than I do. But maybe that could be an option. And I think we talked a little bit about this, and like, no, never ever happened, or could it? I don't know. And that would be a question to you. What do you guys think?
Well, I don't think it's going to work. So I go back cable modem, back to DOCSIS, pre-DOCSIS 1.0. I actually have patents in the cable space for a non-DOCSIS cable modem, like when that could have been a thing. Mm-hmm. The architecture just isn't there. Like, even if you look at just how cable plant works and how the electrical signals work, that the architecture just isn't there. Now, these guys are fiber deep, and the best thing for them to do at that point is to drop one of these next generation nodes where they can basically say, we'll keep you on legacy HFC for those guys. We'll drop a next gen node. We'll pull fiber to the home where it's needed, and we'll do like an open access fiber to the home pipe. But I just don't see the technology in DOCSIS or the will in the cable industry and in cable labs in general to do something like that. Maybe that's controversial, but I don't think they have the ability to do it.
Ideally, I mean, I agree with what Rob mentioned. For sure, maybe in the next few years, probably there could be momentum. Because we didn't know now because of uh, probably it can go like a mix of fiber and copper in few years, and probably after that. And one trigger could be like DOCSIS 4.0, which Rajan mentioned. It tells about all IP, right? So that could be a trigger in few years, but for this moment, yeah, it is very uncertain.
I think it just depends how much more fiber they build off of that new stuff. Someone brought up that some of the challenges are not necessarily technical, but even if they could technically do it, I mean, true. I bet y'all have had experience with them, but it's more of a organizational challenge, right? Culturally, it's a challenge more so than it. And I say that as someone to where they would, I think we were talking to some cable providers where they'd say, FWA is like the poisonous word because FWA is eating their lunch. So you're like, we don't talk about doing that kind of thing in this house, okay?
Yeah, I mean, and Amy mentioned this about brand, right? And so it's important to have brands and strength of brand in the markets and some of the other. And AT&T strives a lot to try to improve our brands as much as possible. And by having the opportunities to the access providers, we are strengthening our brand across the country now, right? So we're getting our brand in areas like this week, we're going to be launching in Boise, Idaho, right? Of all places. So we're getting our brand out there. Everybody knows our wireless brand, but now they're getting our internet brand. And when they continue to try to provide this, the onus is on the access providers to provide the service associated with this. And we have pretty stringent contracts with SLAs based on these, right? And so I think there was a mention about co-investments of things, and that's confusing to me. But the SLAs and others are expectations. So as we then look at something like fixed wireless, something that we AT&T are used to some degree, but mostly in the millimeter wave space, we have to figure that out, right? We have to figure out what does it mean to have our brand running through a network that we're not familiar with, that we don't know how it works. We don't know what the customer, in particular, customer experience is going to be, let alone the technology. Because at the end of the day, it's AT&T brand, AT&T shirts, AT&T gateway at the end of his network or at the end of Rob's or at the end of Amy's network. Now we have to make sure that they are going to have our brand well represented because we have to continue to provide enhancements to our brand to continue to be viable against these competitive threats.
Before we open up to questions from the room, will open access on fixed wireless be a big thing in 2 years?
What do you like to think?
I'm big. Will it be part of our will it be a part of our solution, or will it be across the board in any markets? Yeah, that's a good question. Not for me. That's a question for the.
So the only thing I would say is, so a stat that's public from Toronto is that there's about 250,000 customers on the technology. Just from a technology standpoint, that's like a pilot, at least to the carriers anyways. And so you kind of have to get on this technology journey where you get at least a path to 1 million subs on this technology and then kind of going forward. And so I think as we think about open access, I think you're getting on that path. Whereas the path today, which is like BEAD funded builds and government funded builds, and you stay in the WISP world, you still stay in like the sub 500,000 sub count kind of zone. So it's just the whole thing is maturing. And I to Craig's point, we don't know, but I can tell you that it's probably not going to get to that level of scale without more partners. So that's what I would say.
I would like to add, one example of CBRS, the Citizen Broadband Service, right? So, yeah, as Jonathan mentioned, there is for sure a positive momentum right now. We hope it will grow in, 2 to 3 years for sure, because of, one thing is challenging markets or hard to reach areas that fiber cannot reach. For sure, that could be, the fast entry point, or as Rob mentioned. So, hopefully it will be a good figure in a couple of years for sure, relatively.
So I'll piggyback on that, right? So again, I'm a fiber guy, but yes, there's a place for FWA. There's a place for satellite. I actually did a design. I'm not giving away hopefully too much inside information. Did a Toronto G2 design in a dense metro area and got 6,000 rooftops in blast radius, which is insane. Like if you actually deployed that and got to saturation on those radios, that would be a great thing, right? But then we looked at like what's going to drive these customers to your point. What's going to drive them away from FWA at that point? So I'm going to go out on a limb here. You said 2 years. If you give me 3, I'd be all in. I think we're going to have to move some heavy compute inside the home for inference to all these applications and technologies and things that, like, if you had asked me 2 years ago, these things didn't exist. And now I looked at the credit card bills in my company and there's so many Claudes and OpenAIs and paying for this stuff, right? So to move that kind of stuff into your home, to have that kind of automation in your home, having a dense GPU cluster inside your home does not seem particularly insane to me. And when you look at, and I use this analogy a lot. I've been divorced. I paid for both lawyers and I would get bills and they were talking to each other without me on the phone. And I'm like, who's the adult in the room? This was an hour-long conversation and I benefit from this at all. You let these machines talk to each other and you give them enough pipe, they will fill the entire pipe. And then everybody who doesn't have that pipe, will want that. And that's why 2 to 5 years time, we'll be pushing fiber dense everywhere because we'll need that much compute in the home and we'll need that much compute. Going out.
Where's your fiber, man?
Oh, sorry. My wife dressed me today, so I don't have my logos on. I don't have any pens. They don't give me pens.
Oh. Okay, do we have any questions to You were first. Oh, then. Back shift, yes.
Oh, sorry. There's a couple of questions I should be mind asking. Did you guys ever find this fixed wireless first to an area, calling it up penetration, knowing that customers are there to justify the final bill? I think a lot of us have come from fixed wireless school before. Yeah, okay. How did you guys do?
I was acknowledging the question. So
But you're not. But and from a wholesale access perspective versus full it's like, is everybody in the room doing wholesale already? And is everybody already working with other business partners? And like doesn't your wholesale access and open access really overlap and kind of mimic and almost like reinforce the point of open access?
Because you were excited.
he's nodding. He's asking you, right?
Okay, I'll take it. So I will say on the fixed wireless edge out story that I laid out before, 100% every one of those designs, every one of those plans is based on a preconceived, pre-planned notion that fiber is the technology and we will go there. Meaning fiber economically makes sense and we will be there eventually. And to Craig's point, we're just dropping FWA to pick up customers faster. And then we're moving those radios out like we talked about to you get to the point where you're just hitting the edges with that because fiber no longer makes sense. You're outside your polygon and you leave a little bit behind. I know of people who have tried this where they've gone in with fixed wireless and say they're going to build fiber later. And that's why I mentioned they've never actually done it. But I also think those are players who don't know how to build fiber. And they're kind of hoping that they'll build that muscle at that point. And that's not really how that works. Like you can have conversations with people that are on the side about how successful some of these fiber builders have been and some of them haven't been successful because it is a bit of a magic, a little bit special sauce kind of thing. And then OAP versus wholesale. I always say I'm wholesale, not OAP, because I consider OAP to be a subset of wholesale. And so I get away with just saying we're wholesale and then I never have to explain it.
So, quick question, because everyone's tired of your nice voice. But part of open access, when you have the retail service provider and you can have the wholesale/open access provider, the retail service provider is empowered by having some level of visibility and access into the network so that they don't have to call or bother the open access from the human manual standpoint, diagnose customer problems and know, is the problem on my layer 3 service or is it on the layer 2 service at the open access level? When we talk about multiple different technologies, how important is it to the retail service provider to either get details that are specific to the technology versus having abstraction readily? And then for the open access network standpoint, are you guys willing to expose specific details about technology specifics versus also just saying, hey, our side looks good, green, don't worry about the details, versus we know it's bad, it's our problem?
I won't say or stop. I was going to say, I believe the feature just got released. Is this like a self-serving promotion for COS?
652.
For those in the room, they love to tease me. And so they
There are trigger words for Sachin. So we have about 3 of them. So if you think about the day in the life of a customer and the experiences of a customer, they see AT&T, they see the brand, they call 1-800-AT&T, say, I'm having problems. And so on my side of the fence, what I'm trying to do is empower that person on the other end to troubleshoot as much as possible the issues at hand and try to solve as much as possible the issue at hand. So we talk about things like remote ONT reset, which we have to do as Prime at some point, and amongst other things where I can push buttons on my side that solves 80% of the customer issue and gets them back up. It does 2 things. Gets the customer back up and they feel better about the service and avoids expensive field dispatches, right? Which they appreciate, right? And so I need exposure. So part of, in fiber world, it's OLTs, ONTs, there's last miles, there's light levels, there's all kinds of everybody's like, oh, I know all these things. And so the standards are built around providing some of these metrics and measurements to me on my side to expose to my care teams and organizations. In the fixed wireless world, we're just kind of scratching at that. We don't really know for sure, but we understand that we need to have a customer experience that can keep both costs down, but in particular, the experience has to be good for the customer. Again, back to our brand, right? So now I turn it over to you.
Me? Yeah, well, I like less truck rolls. Then the question is, can we expose those things easy and cheaply? Otherwise, yeah, we love green or red if that solves 80% of the problem. But that is the investment for everything else. So TBD.
Yeah. So
I don't know what I don't know.
Less struggles. Yeah. So I'll give you I'm a year further into the conversation. I think your benefit, which is my challenge, which is AT&T knows what fiber is. They do this themselves. They know what metrics are. They know what light levels are. They can look at that and say, packet loss, light levels, this is what's going on. They look at yours and they scratch their heads.
Yes, sir.
Correct. So lucky you, no idea. Lucky you, good red bag. That's all. Yellow, reboot, green, good, red bag. Yeah. Me on the other hand, I might have to share a little more data to cut down on truck rolls.
Yes.
Just wanted in Canada, I deployed Canada in 2 different networks, still rural here. And when I've asked my engineer to do the simulation, it used to be working at TELUS, Rogers, L, and everything. It couldn't believe the performance of Terrana with the real existence. So just to let you know that if this technology that costs probably 4 times higher than ubiquity, multifotic, and all this stuff would have been there 10 years ago, the real product for fixed wireless access, it may have changed. For rural, it will have changed and not putting fiber at $10,000 per home in certain area. Okay. But still, it's probably late for the wireless internet service provider to come up with this product. But at least it's really a game changer. Okay. And actually, we are running open access in Nova Scotia with the single pane of glass, and we're sharing the information to the RSP and to the operator because needs. So Terrana, Cambium is all ingested into the same platform.
I'm sitting here, right? In the fact that the technology's got to a point that I can viably create a product associated with the technology, not best effort, not like we are with the 5G solution sets or the old fixed wireless, but the Toronto solution offers a potential for product and product solution. And so that makes it interesting from an AT&T standpoint.
But there is no reason why we shouldn't share the information with all the key stakeholders throughout the
Absolutely.
I think when you could answer right away, or even better do a proactive because
Well, hang on, because this is the follow-up, right? So this is why I asked, because depending on who you are, I think that perspective changes. Because if the open access provider provides all the information, all the detailed metrics that are nuanced technology, they are basically saying we are okay with the ISP determining what meets CSFLA and what's not. And it's not always binary, especially in wireless. It's not always a binary like it is in fiber. In fiber, you have some level of binary determination. Light levels are within a range, and it's up and active or not. In wireless, who makes that gray area decision? And if I expose all that to the ISP and they make that determination, are you okay with that as the open access network? Or are you okay with them telling you that they're good or bad and they're rolling with it?
Thank you for talking me on this line.
We were on board on a fixed wireless network, and they told us before you can connect to this tower, these are your parameters. If you're not within these parameters, you're not connecting this tower. They didn't give us that. So you're in those dB levels. And if you connect it and it goes outside the dB levels, they kick you off. They say you're outside the parameters. So then you have to go realign. So there is ways to have open access on fixed wireless network.
And that's contractual, not that, but then you're saying I
No.
don't have to provide it.
It's contractual and maintenance. If you do not if a tree grows in front of it and the dBs drop, then you have to disconnect. They kick you off the tower. You're not connected anymore. You have to go give another solution to that client. And there's open access to both those ones. And we had open access on it, on the wire. So
Yeah, well, I understand. I mean, we haven't gone down this journey yet, right? We're trying to figure it out. And there are nuances and challenges associated with something that is not terrestrial in the ground and unknown quantity and entity inside AT. And so we've got to figure out what that means. And then subsequent to that, we have to weigh out the risks of that. If it is the value, risk and reward. Is the reward worth the risks associated with things that have a variability we're not used to and used to consuming from an ISP standpoint? But I will say, I don't want to know, I use the term that I coined. I call the open access networks Nanya, right? Because it's none of my business to know what goes on inside that network, because I'm paying them to do it. I'm paying Jonathan, I'm paying Rob, I'm paying those guys to manage those networks. And I need to know the basics of what's going on in those networks to make sure that they are doing their job. And if they're not, there are penalties associated with that in the contracts. There are hold accountability scenarios before we get too far into where they're not doing their job and they're affecting my brand. And so you're right. We have a journey yet to go, but we can walk that journey now and figure that out and then make the decision on, does it make sense for us to take the next steps or not? And to what degree and what extent do we need those steps?